Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Rare Candy here. Today we are back with another Sword and Shield deck profile, this time taking a look at Cinderace, one of my personal new favorite cards that we're getting from Sword and Shield. If you guys have been watching the channel for a while, you know me, I am a sucker for one prize, stage 2 attacking Pokemon, and Cinderace is definitely one of the coolest ones we've had in a good bit. I think the last one like this that kind of caught my attention was kind of like Gallade, or maybe even the old Vikavolt from Unbroken Bonds. But yeah, it's definitely one of the better stage 2 attackers we've had in recent memory, and one, like I said, been really excited to actually get around to start testing with. And speaking of which too, if you guys do want to see this deck in action, this is the same list that was featured in our recent testing rounds video, so I will have a link down below in the description if you guys do want to go check that out as well. But let's get into the deck. Let's see how it's going to look. So up first, we have 4 copies of Jirachi. So Jirachi, of course, you guys are probably familiar with this card by now. One of the best consistency cards that we have in the game for that Star Wish ability. So of course, once during our turn, we can look at the top 5 cards of our deck, get a trainer card, and then Jirachi becomes asleep. So the big thing with Cinderace is that it always needs to be on your bench and become your active. And Jirachi is just easily the best like pivot Pokemon that we have in the game. So every time a Cinderace gets knocked out, you can promote Jirachi, use Stellar Wish for a turn, then retreat into your Cinderace and keep attacking. I really like for Jirachi right now here too, because in the new format, the player who goes first can't attack, or I'm sorry, they can't attack, but they also can't now play supporter cards thanks to the new rule change. And I think it's really important to be able to get Jirachi on the first turn and be able to maybe find a quick ball to find your score bunnies or whatever it might be. So I'm liking the big thick 4 count of Jirachi here. But going on next, we have 4 copies of Score Bunny here. This is going to be one of the ones we're getting in Sword and Shield. I think there's 2 coming out in the set, but I'm opting for this one. It has 60 HP and its attack is pretty decent. Just for a fire, it does 30 and you discard the energy attached to it. So the discarding energy, not a big deal. If we're attacking with this, more than likely it's getting knocked out anyways. So again, the discard doesn't matter. And the Cinderace that we're playing can actually get energy back out of the discard pile anyways. So yeah, 30 damage for 1, pretty decent on just a low HP evolving basic like this. So up next from there though, we have 2 copies of Raboot in the deck as well. We are going to try to manually evolve a couple of our Score Bunnies or our Ditto that we have in the deck. But Raboot, not too much to say about this guy. 90 HP. Its second attack, pretty vanilla, 2 fire and colors for 70. You're never getting 3 energies on this thing, let's face it. But its first attack, kind of okay. 1 fire does 20, and you search your deck for a fire and attach it to Raboot. So not horrible, but again, usually in the case of Score Bunny, if you're attacking with this thing, more than likely it's getting knocked out on your opponent's next turn anyways. And it's basically just to help us get into our Cinderaces. So next up, of course, we have the big boy himself, Cinderace, new stage 2 Pokemon from Sword and Shield. So 1 prize attacker, 170 HP, so definitely on the tankier side of stage 2s that we have right now. But has this ability, Libero, so once during your turn, if Cinderace is on your bench and becomes your active, you can get 2 fire energies from discard and attach them to Cinderace, which is really nice because its attack is 2 fire and a colorless is 190, and you discard 2 energy from Cinderace. So you guys can see the synergy here. We're discarding our own energies with our attack, and whenever we retreat into a new Cinderace, we can get those energies right back. And the fact that this other energy is a colorless is really big because that enables us to play recycle energy, which you'll see in this list. So every time a Cinderace gets knocked out, we can get recycle energy back and you know, get 2 energies out of discard pile and attach that 1 recycle from hand every turn to keep attacking. And 190 is a good number to hit just because you 2-shot everything in the game, including VMAXs. And it's also decent against some of the basic GXs we still have in the format. Think like your Dedennes, your Heatrans, Blacephalon GX, all that stuff. So yeah, big fan of Cinderace. Just a nice, pretty consistent like stage 2 attacker. It sets itself up, hits for decent damage, has a decent amount of HP for 1 prizer. Also does have 1 retreat, important to point out, because we can you know, use a skateboard on it if we have to, or we can just hard retreat it into a fresh Cinderace if we need to. So yeah, really big fan of this card. Going on though, we have a couple of other kind of supporting Pokemon in the deck. We are playing a 1/1 Cinccino. This is going to be another new card from Sword and Shield. This ability will look very familiar to anyone who's been playing for a while. So with this, you discard one card from hand, draw two cards. So the same ability that we've seen in the past with Empoleon, or more famously, Zoroark GX. So this is just a nice little consistency booster that we have here. Also, the discard is pretty good because if we still need fire energy in the discard pile, Cinccino can also help with that. Its first, or sorry, not first, but only attack it has here. Also not too terrible for a colorless is 40, and you attach a basic energy from discard to one of your bench Pokemon. So sometimes that can be nice to maybe get an energy back in play. Like if you need to take a turn off, like if you didn't find a Cinderace, maybe you just go in with a Cinccino and get a fire energy on something preemptively. Can be okay. Also playing this Minccino, I believe there's two different ones coming out in Sword and Shield. Or playing this one just for one, it does 30. Not too relevant, but I think it's a bit better than the other one. The other one's like, look at the top card of your opponent's deck or something like that. So I'm opting to do the one that's just doing damage. It seems a little bit better to me. So going on from there, we have one copy of Ditto Prism Star. Of course, this just gives us the flexibility of being a 5th Score Bunny or a 2nd Cinccino or Minccino effectively, just to give us some flexibility in terms of what we want to evolve into. And then from there, we have one copy of Mew to round out the list. Pikarom is seeing some early hype for Sword and Shield, and being able to protect against Tag Bolt GX is really good. Also, to protect against things like Venom Shot and things like that are also going to be good. We play a very interesting item card in this list, and forcing our opponent to deal with our active and not get around attacking our active is going to be something I think is going to be important with this particular Cinderace deck. Mew also does have Psi Power for a colorless energy. Just spread 3 damage counters in any way that you choose to. Not too relevant, but mainly for this bench barrier ability, preventing bench damage done to our Pokemon here. So going on to our trainer cards, guys, we have 4 copies of Lily. This is actually a card that I think might look a little bit weird. A Lily is definitely, I think, a card that gets worse after Sword and Shield just because of the first turn rule change, but really haven't been a big fan of the new Professor's Research in this deck, just because even though it has synergy in terms of like discarding your hand and getting fire energies in the discard, there are a lot of moving pieces in this deck, and there's not too many times where you're just like, I don't care about this hand. Let's discard these rare candies, these Cinderaces. Just the discards tend to be, I think, very harsh in this deck, and I rather just have the flexibility of Lily instead. So Lily, of course, draw until you have 6, but it's your first turn. Draw until you have 8 instead. Going on, though, we have the much more reliable Cynthia, just a shuffle and draw 6, kind of the best friend of Stage 2 and like evolution decks, I think. And then from there, we have 2 copies of Rosa as well. Rosa, I think, really insane card in one prize decks, especially in a deck like this that is only attacking for basically a single attachment at a time. So Rosa, whenever your Pokemon get knocked out, or one of your Pokemon gets knocked out on your opponent's last turn, you can search your deck for a basic energy, a Pokemon, and a trainer card. So you can grab like Rare Candy, Cinderace, Fire Energy, keep on attacking, or whatever you might need to keep on going. So a huge fan of Rosa in one prize decks, especially this Cinderace deck here. Going on from there, we have 2 copies of Giant Hearth. That's going to be our stadium card of choice. We don't play too many fire energies in this deck, so it's going to be important to be able to find them when we need them. Of course, we can't get energies off of Stellar Wish, but Giant Hearth is something we can get off Stellar Wish, also off Rosa, and it allows us to discard cards from our hand in the process as well, which is really, really nice here. So that's why we are choosing this. Not playing Heat Factory at all. I think some people might attempt to play Heat Factory initially. That was actually in some of my early lists for this. But what I found is you don't play nearly enough energy to get consistent use out of Heat Factory, and it winds up being a dead card like 90% of the time. So don't play Heat Factory. It's bad unless you're playing an extreme amount of energy in here. Giant Hearth is going to tend to be a little bit better, I think. So going on from there, though, getting into our items, of course, 4 copies of Rare Candy. We need this to skip that middle evolution, go straight into our Cinderace as soon as possible. Next up from there, though, we have a very interesting card I've not seen anyone really kind of explore yet with Cinderace. That's going to be 3 copies of Giant Bomb. So Giant Bomb, this is a card that hasn't seen too much play. I think like Guardian decks have played a 1 count a lot of the time, but I think it actually is pretty cool with Cinderace. So it's a tool card. And if it's attached to your active and they take 180 or more damage, your opponent takes 10 damage counters in response. And then you discard this at the end of your opponent's next turn. So why this is so impactful with Cinderace is because we're doing 190 damage, And with Giant Bomb, that's going to bump us up to 290. And that's relevant because we effectively can one-shot all of the tag teams in the current format. I think the only ones we're going to be a little bit shy of knocking out are going to be things like Magikarp Wailord GX, which really doesn't see too much play though. But against all of the other decks like your Mewtwo Mews, your Reshizards, your Pikaroms, they're all going to have to attack into this and get knocked out if you've already attacked them once. That's really cool because you can hit them for 190, have your Giant Bomb, they get knocked out, coming back into your turn, and you get to actually get a fresh hit in on something else if you choose to as well. So Giant Bomb, really been liking this card a lot. I think it's really cool. Up next from there, though, we do have one copy of Great Catcher. This fills a kind of similar role in regard. So I think you could dedicate these 4 spots to Pokemon Catcher or maybe even Custom Catcher. I think that's an option. But yeah, Great Catcher is kind of like a pseudo 4th Giant Bomb, just because it's a little bit more proactive. You don't have to wait for your opponent to attack into you. And we have no gusting effects in this deck. So if we do attack into something, our opponent retreats into something fresh, we need to be able to still bring up a damaged Pokemon. So of course, Great Catcher, discard 2 cards from your hand, switch your opponent's active with one of their bench GXs or EXs. The discarding effect is also good too because of Cinderace's ability. So again, guys, you can turn this into a 4th Giant Bomb. You can turn all these into Pokemon Catchers. You could play 3 Catcher, 1 Great Catcher. You could play 4 Custom Catchers, whatever it might be. But I think some combination like that is going to be really nice. But again, I like the Giant Bomb just because against tag team decks in particular, it puts in a ton of work. So going on from there, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball. So Quick Ball, another new card we're getting from Sword and Shield, easily one of the best cards in the set. I actually made an entire video just dedicated to this one card alone not too long ago. Go check that out if you want to see that. But anyways, it's an item card. You discard a card from your hand, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, and put it into your hand. So you can discard Fire Energy, obviously, to activate Cinderace's ability and get your basics into play. I'm also just in general, I think, a fan of Quick Ball over something like Elm or Professor Oak's setup going forward, just because of the new first turn rules are so limiting and so oppressive for decks like this. I think Quick Ball is generally going to be a bit more reliable in terms of ensuring that you get a score bunny down on turn 1. So up next from there, though, we have 3 copies of Pokemon Communication, another searching option. Of course, guys, you're probably familiar with this one by now. You put a Pokemon from hand back into your deck, search your deck for another Pokemon. So just another way to search out our cards, whether it be basics, evolutions, whatever it might be. Next up from there, we have 1 copy of Fishing Rod, another new card from Sword and Shield. New form of recovery, really excited about this card. Has a lot of synergy with Cinderace in particular too. So you shuffle in up to 2 Pokemon and up to 2 basic energies from discard back into your deck. So this is cool because we can get our evolutions and, you know, all of our Pokemon back. But also too, if we haven't quite found our recycle energy yet in the game and we're still being reliant on manual attachments or finding a new energy every turn to attack with, Fishing Rod can be nice at getting back some energies as well. Going on from there, we have 3 copies of Switch. Very important card since our deck is always reliant on Cinderace being on our bench prior to attacking. Switch also going to be really important at getting around Absols if our opponent is playing that, because that will actually make it very difficult for our Jirachis to be able to freely retreat. And then we also have 1 copy of Reset Stamp here as well, so we can easily find it off Rosa when we need it, but of course it forces our opponent to shuffle their hand into their deck and they draw equal to the amount of prize cards they have left. So this is definitely nice, maybe in the late game, like maybe when your opponent has like 2 prizes left, you get down a Giant Bomb on your Cinderace, Reset Stamp them. That might prevent them from using something like a Mallow and Lana or like custom catchers to get around your Giant Bombs, whatever it might be. So Reset Stamp, pretty self-explanatory. Up next from there, we have 2 copies of a Skateboard, another switching option that we have in the deck. Mainly going to be for our Jirachis because a Skateboard will reduce our retreat cost by 1 and allow us to retreat through status conditions like sleep. So again, mainly for Jirachi, but you can throw it down on other Pokemon if you do need it. And to round out our trainer cards, we have 2 copies of Evolution Incense, another new card from Sword and Shield. Just search your deck for an evolution, put it into your hand. Pretty straightforward. We can grab our Cinderaces, Raboots, our Cinccino, whatever it might be, and get our evolutions in play a little bit quicker. And going on from there, we have a couple of energies. We have 5 copies of Fire Energy in total here. Doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it's really because we don't need a whole lot. You really only need 2, technically, in your discard pile at any given point. So we're playing the 5 count just because it makes them kind of easier to find in the early games whenever we need to discard stuff with Quick Ball. And in case we prize some, you still want to have a couple of extras on hand. But we're also playing 1 copy of Recycle Energy to round out the list. So of course the combo, like I mentioned earlier, is every time you attack with Cinderace, you can throw down a Recycle Energy, get 2 of your Fire Energies from discard back onto Cinderace, and then every time this gets knocked out, you get that Recycle Energy back, and you can keep looping your attacks over and over with the Recycle Energy. So I know this energy count looks really low, and it is, I won't lie. I do think there is consideration for a second Recycle Energy, just because in case you prize it, it can be pretty bad. And, you know, you hate searching or like having to dig in the late game to find energies. You'd rather just get down your Recycle Energy pretty early on and not have to worry about digging to find energies. You'd rather just be able to prioritize finding your Pokemon instead of like giant hearts and stuff like that in the late game. So I think there is a consideration for a second energy, but yeah, you really don't need a whole lot in this deck here. So that is going to be our attempt at the Cinderace deck, guys. Like I said, I'm a personal big fan of this card. I'm just a huge fan of this type of deck in general. This is kind of like my ideal play style if I'm going to play a deck. But I think there's some cool things going on here. Like I said, it's 1 prizer, can 2-shot everything in the game. The Giant Bombs in particular really swing the tag team matchups in your favor if they can't successfully kind of play around them. You also have other great support cards that tie nicely into your deck, like Rosa and Cinccino as well. So if you guys are a fan of attacking Stage 2 decks, Cinderace is definitely one of the ones to keep an eye out for after Sword and Shield comes out. But if you guys did enjoy this video today, feel free to like and subscribe and comment down below what you think about this Cinderace deck. And if you can, consider supporting this channel as well by becoming a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up some merch from our online store like the playmat you saw in this video as an example. That would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.